United States has watered down any sense of threat from Moscow after Russian President Vladimir Putin used his State of the Nation address to boast about his country's nuclear weapons capabilities. Putin, who is widely expected to win the presidential election this month, said Moscow's new military capabilities are already on show in Syria. He also said the country is beefing up its military, transport and scientific infrastructure in the Arctic.
The U.S. global missile defense systems are mainly against ballistic missiles. This is the core of our nuclear deterrent. This is why Russia has been developing a modestly priced but extremely effective system to defeat missile defense. Our defense ministry is working with weapons manufacturers on a new ICBM Sarmat. This system will replace our older missiles from the Cold War. With a payload of 200 tons, it's hard to intercept. It has the capability to beat missile defense systems.
We're not surprised by the statements, and the American people should rest assured that we are fully prepared. Our missile defense has never been about them. We need to ensure we have a credible nuclear deterrent, and we are confident that we're prepared to do, and we're prepared to defend this nation no matter what.
Let's get more analysis on this story. We're joined by the nuclear expert Miles Pomper, who is live for us in Washington, D.C. Miles, many thanks for joining us here on TRT World. Let's go in a bit more detail in terms of the weapons that President Putin spoke about. He boasted of a cruise missile that would reach anywhere in the world. He also talked about a low-flying, difficult-to-spot cruise missile with a practically unlimited range and unpredictable flight path, which can bypass lines of interception and is invincible in the face of all existing and future systems of both missile defense and air defense. How credible are these weaponry claims?
Well, I'm quite skeptical about the claim about the low-flying cruise missile. From the early reports, he's talking about a nuclear-powered, not just nuclear-armed cruise missile, that is with a nuclear reactor essentially on board, and that could reach all around the world. I mean, that is a very long stretch, big stretch for some kind of missile system. We've never seen anything like that in the world. So he claims that it was tested. You would have thought if such a weapon was tested, our intelligence community would have picked it up. So I'm quite skeptical of that system. The other system he's talking about is what's called the hypersonic system. The U.S. has been in the process of developing such a system. The Chinese are developing, and the Russians have been doing so for some time. So that kind of system, which is not a cruise missile, but a ballistic missile and often conventional, is much more feasible.
What about the claims about the weapons that are currently being trialed in Syria at this very moment?
In terms of the long-range cruise missiles, or which weapons are you talking about in particular?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, they've already demonstrated the range of some of their systems in Syria for their conventional systems. And that's been a big change in the Russian forces. I mean, we've all seen the photos over the year on CNN and other channels of the U.S. Tomahawks. They use, the big cruise missiles, conventional cruise missiles being launched against Iraq and other countries. The Russians did not have that capability for a long time. This was really a U.S. monopoly after the end of the Cold War, and the Russians are just kind of catching up with the U.S. on this. So that is not, those are obviously credible.
We saw that clip from Dana White, the U.S. press secretary, essentially dismissing the speech by President Putin, saying they're not surprised, they're not worried. How do you think the U.S. is viewing this? Is it a threat to them at all? Well,
I think there's a couple of elements of that. I mean, one element which is that they probably are not clear if this is actually happening or if this is just campaign year bluster by President Putin. But even if there is, potentially such a threat, it's several years in the making. So they wouldn't have to worry about that overnight. So they're trying to, prevent people from panicking at this point or worrying too much for the present day. I do have to say, however, that some of their claims are just not true. I mean, the U.S. claims, that is, in the sense that they say that our missile defense system would stop these weapons. It wouldn't. Our missile defense system is not very good as it is against ballistic missiles, that is, missiles that go up in the air and then come down through gravity. They do nothing against cruise missiles, which are missiles that kind of fly on a straight trajectory powered by some external source. So there's a lot of blustering and a lot of falsehood on both sides of this divide between the two countries.
And that's very interesting. How much do you think of President Putin's speech? A lot of it was a message to the world. But of course, there's an election coming up in Russia in just a few weeks. How much would it have been to galvanize voters ahead of that election?
Well, I don't think the timing is coincidental. President Putin's clearly his strongest card in the Russian electorate, as much as the Russian electorate matters because they're not allowing free elections, is his national security credentials, the sense that he's brought Russia back onto the global stage. And this is, he loves to challenge the U.S. The one arena that Russia is, close to the U.S. on is the nuclear arena. That's the only arena where they are a superpower, unlike all the other arenas like economics and so on. And so, this is his trump card, so to speak, in the election to call on his nuclear arsenal as a demonstration of his nationalist credentials.
Miles, really good to get your thoughts. Miles Pomper joining us there from Washington, D.C. He is a nuclear expert.